Here
All
we
right.
are. All right, now I'm going to start. This meeting of the Glendale Village Council will now come to order. And I will state that due to the restrictions imposed by the state due to the COVID crisis, this is not an in-person meeting, which would be our usual thing. But we have followed all of the applicable regulations of the state that allow us to hold this meeting visually. So we will begin, as we always do, with the Pledge of Allegiance. See if we get the flag up there.
Stephen, if you wouldn't mind giving me host privileges.
I'm now going to ask that anyone who isn't speaking, please mute your system. And when you wish to speak, if it's only for a short time, you might want to try the space bar on your machine, which usually works to temporarily unmute. Otherwise, you can flick the muted microphone on your under the picture on your screen. We have an agenda that has been circulated, and I'm going to make some changes in that agenda because we have so many speakers. We have a couple of items of business where the people involved might wish to leave early. So I'm going to move up the reports from the police and the fire chiefs up to the top of the agenda just after the minutes. And we had a matter at the Planning Commission meeting, conditional use to install a swimming pool. And out of mercy to the residents who are here, I'm going to move their item, which is Resolution 2020-23, up to just after the reports from the chiefs. So with that, I'm going to ask the clerks to call the roll so we can confirm that we have a quorum.
Mr. Bessel. Mr. Bessel.
Aye.
Mr. Holt.
Aye.
Dukes.
Aye.
Senko.
Aye.
Ray Smith. Ray Smith. Kreidler.
Jeff, you're muted.
Mayor, if I could interrupt for a second. Mr. Basement's computer is giving us quite a bit of feedback. I'm not sure if there's maybe another electronic device near the microphone.
Jeff, did you hear that? Jeff, can you hear me? Give me a wave if you can hear me. We can't tell what you're saying, Jeff. Looks like you're unmuted. We can't tell what you're saying.
Jeff, do you have headphones or something you could plug into your computer to use as a microphone instead?
Okay, we'll give Jeff just a minute to plug in.
Jeff, you might try leaving the meeting and then rejoining.
David, I'm just wondering if this doesn't work, can Jeff mute his system and then call in for whatever comments he wants to make?
Yes, he can. The Zoom information has phone numbers in it. I'm not sure if Jeff can hear me say this. Has phone numbers in it that he can make a phone call and join via audio with the phone call.
Okay.
He just rejoined. We'll see if this works. All right. Jeff, I can't see you, but I was just explaining to you that, yeah, whatever that electronic interference is isn't going away. If you go back to the email I sent with the Zoom information, there are phone numbers to call in for audio purposes, so you can still be in the meeting with video and participate, including voting by audio through the phone.
Mr. Mayor, I'm going to try to call Jeff directly and try to work with him offline while you guys keep going.
Thank you.
I have Jeff on the phone now. I'm walking him through it. He's switching the phone. He said, please proceed.
Okay. The next we're going to turn to the minutes. We will start with the minutes of the regular meeting that we had on August 3rd. Those meetings have been circulated. Some amendments have been made and a final copy has been circulated. Do I have a motion to accept the minutes as drafted in the final version?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, Marilyn? Ms. Duke?
Thank you. Yes, I will be voting against adoption of the minutes because they do not include one or two vital points I tried to make and emphasize the need to reach out and find some healing ground in order to move forward, and to do so without leveling accusations, getting backs up and being defensive. There is a need for further conversations, and it may have been alluded to in the revised final minutes that we're voting on. However, I do not see it. So I would refer back to that, and for this reason, we'll be voting against adoption.
Okay.
Thank you.
We have a motion to accept the minutes and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor, well, I guess we better do a roll call vote here. So Madam Clerk, would you just call the roll?
For the August 3rd minutes, Mr. Bessel,
Aye.
Mr. Hoeweller,
Aye.
Ms. Duke,
No.
Ms. Masenko,
Aye.
Mr. Bay Smith.
Jeff, they can hear. Jeff, they can hear you now if you'd like to respond.
Okay, here.
Yay or nay?
I did not hear the motion, please.
Can you repeat the motion for me?
The motion was to accept the minutes as drafted in the version that was finally circulated to council. And there's a motion second, and we're going through the roll call.
Jeff, you can respond.
Thank you.
Jeff, yes or no on the motion?
Said aye, yes.
Thank you. Mr. Kreidler.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, we now have a motion carried. We now have turned to the minutes of our special meeting that was held on August 26th. The primary purpose of which was to fill a vacancy on the Glendale Planning and Historic Preservation Commission. And after interviews and deliberation by council, I appointed Ms. Leslie Cooper to fill the vacancy, and that was approved by council. So we have the minutes from that meeting, and it's been circulated. So I would invite a motion to accept the minutes as circulated.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carried. We turn now to the police and fire reports. Chief Warman, hello?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Chief Warman, do you have a report? I know it's a little, I know we're ahead of you because we're still in August, but
Right.
you have some good news to report, so I hope you'll provide us with.
Well, again, my reports will be in everybody's hands on Wednesday morning, but I would like to report, if everybody can see this, I don't know if they can or not.
Oh,
That's my
Oh.
grandbaby. She was born on Friday, and I just want to welcome her into this world.
Let the record show the council joins you in welcoming your new grandchild.
Thank you.
And I will just say that our police department continues to do us proud here. We received a letter of thanks from the Evendale Police in helping them break up what may be a national ring of ATM thieves. And we had a incident where someone's car broke down, and Officer Hillings was on the spot to help them out, and they sent us a thank you note for that. So it just shows our police force is on the job and doing good stuff.
Thank you.
Chief Hardwick, do you have a fire report for us?
Sure, yeah. So mostly for last month, as we've been doing for the last number of months, dealing with the COVID-19 events. Up until the past few days, the numbers in Hamilton County have been fairly steady. There is an uptick in numbers now in the last day or two. I'll get the current numbers tomorrow from Hamilton County Public Health and also from Hamilton County EMA. So I'll share those as soon as they come out. But it does look like you're seeing an uptick, and I'm sure that's related to schools mainly going back in session. We'll see where it goes, and they're watching it very closely. On a good note, we were able to, we partnered up with all of our police, fire, public works, water department, and administration, build a list of supplies, PPE supplies that we picked up today from Hamilton County EMA. So we should be well equipped through hopefully the rest of the year. It's a good time to start stocking those up. Again, with flu season coming and where that's all going to end, we're just trying to be proactive in preparing for anything that could come up. We do currently still have 15 cases in Glendale. That number, we've had names drop off and names go on. So we will continue to watch that and see how it is. But we've been in the teens now for some time. Internally here in the department, we've been working hard on the building work and planning as we progress along. We've met with our fire department leadership team and working to set up the plans and get us prepared, our first steps for 2021. Looking at our budget and starting to get things ready as we do move ahead. We're looking at any thoughts and ideas on the potential for truck replacement considerations. We are still in line for a grant. Whether or not it gets funded is up to the federal government at this point. And we intend to apply once more. So, you know, we'll keep fighting that fight as long as they can, as long as they allow us to put in, we're going to continue to do so. Last month, we were fortunate to put eight new firefighters on. With that, we started a volunteer firefighter training class here last week, which includes our department as well as Wyoming and Green Hills Fire Department. And then we had 2 people from the outside that wanted to get their training and certification. The only piece of down news that I have is in light of the COVID-19 situation is we're going to cancel our fire department open house in October, and just think that it's appropriate to do that in light of the current situation. You know, we're sorry to say that, but I think it's the best choice. So we'll work at it again next year. And that's all from the fire department.
Okay, it's a tough call, but the right call, Chief. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, I'm going to turn now to Resolution 2020-23. A resolution authorizing the conditional use of land owned by Nicholas and Patricia Monifo for a swimming pool to be constructed according to plans and specifications provided by applicant pursuant to certain conditions and declaring an emergency. This matter was before the Planning Commission earlier this evening, and the Planning Commission approved it. And per our ordinances, a conditional use must go from the Planning Commission for final approval to the Council. So do I have a motion for this resolution?
So moved, Mr. Mayor.
Do I have a second? Okay. And do I have a motion to dispense with 3 reads?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, Madam Clerk?
Dispense with the 3 reads. Mr. Bessel,
Aye.
Mr. Howeller,
Aye.
Ms. Duke,
Aye.
Ms. Masenko,
Aye.
Mr. Bay Smith,
Aye.
Mr. Kreidler.
Aye.
For the resolution, Mr. Bessel,
Aye.
Mr. Howeller,
Aye.
Ms. Duke,
Aye.
Ms. Masenko,
Aye.
Mr. Bay Smith,
Aye.
Mr. Kreidler.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to turn now to the public comment section. And I can tell you we have 11 speakers on the agenda. There were some late additions, that after the agendas were published, some people came forward within our deadline and did ask to speak. And so I'm just going to remind the speakers that we have a 5-minute time limit on persons addressing council. And we wouldn't mind if you use less time, it's okay. But you do have your 5 minutes. Time will be kept by our assistant administrator, Mr. Lumsden, and he will signal to you when you have 1 minute left. And then when your time is up, you're really going to have to stop, and we will mute your microphone so the meeting can proceed. So I'm going to begin with our first speaker on my list, Ms. Beth Kelly. Ms. Kelly, are you there? We're not hearing you, Ms. Kelly.
Sorry about that. Sorry about that. I'm not very Zoom savvy. Can you hear me now?
Can hear you now.
Great. Can I go ahead?
Please do.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Mayor Lofty and Council for giving me the opportunity to speak today. I'm Beth Kelly, and I've lived in the village with my husband, Andrew, for 14 years, and we have one 12-year-old son who goes to Princeton Middle School. I just wanted to speak today because after the last council meeting, I felt it was important to express my appreciation to Mayor Lofty and Councilwoman Duke for their willingness to address the difficult topic of race relations in Glendale. I'm particularly grateful to Ms. Duke. As the only person of color on council, she's obviously uniquely qualified to begin a discussion on race in Glendale, either as part of her position on council or as a Black resident of an overwhelmingly white community. We all owe it to her and all of our Black and brown neighbors to listen to what they have to say, to acknowledge that we hear them. Sorry, lost my place. And to look at ourselves. It's up to all of us to create a village which is welcoming to anyone interested in living here, regardless of their race, religion, gender, identification, or sexual orientation. This past summer has shown us how much work is yet to be done in the United States when it comes to racial justice and equity. For those of us who care about such things, we must examine our privilege and our inherent biases if we want to contribute to a better world for our neighbors of color and our children and grandchildren. And just as we as individuals need to be honest with ourselves about these biases, this must also happen on a community level, a state level, and at national levels. There's much work to be done, and we're blessed to have leaders in this village who have been willing to stand up for what is right. It's my hope that we can move forward as a village, in spite of how uncomfortable it may be for many, and continue not just to have difficult conversations, but also to work together regardless of age, socioeconomic status, race, or political party, to reach out to Glendale residents who are in the minority. If we are to understand the many ways in which systemic racism negatively impacts the lives of our neighbors and friends, it's critical that we ask them to tell us about their experiences. It is also critical that we put aside selfish concerns about things like our image as a community or property values and just listen to what they have to say. I believe everyone in Glendale deserves to be able to tell their stories and to be heard, and in so doing, will become a stronger community. Everyone who lives in Glendale deserves representation, but that can only happen if people know they can speak about difficult things without fear of retribution and public humiliation. I hope we can move forward to the extent possible in light of the fact that we're in the middle of a pandemic to have planned forums on a community level to discuss issues of race and how to make Glendale a better place for all residents now and in the future. Again, this involves being willing to listen without judgment and to honestly and graciously ask questions when needed, rather than acting out of anger and defensiveness. I believe that if we all listen, we can build a better village for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, Ms. Amy Baldridge. Ms. Baldridge, are you there?
Yes, thank you.
Please proceed.
Thank you, Mayor Lofty and council members, for the opportunity to speak tonight. I'm Amy Baldridge. I'm a 16-year resident of Glendale. I'm a wife, a mother of 3 school-age children, and a volunteer with a number of community organizations, and I'm a person of faith. As I watched the news segment covering the discussion of racism in Glendale, I felt proud of my community. I was pleased that someone had taken initiative to facilitate this timely discussion. We are living through a pivotal moment of opportunity with respect to our Black and Brown neighbors in ensuring that remnants of discriminatory policy are finally eradicated from our organizations, institutions, and nation. Every community in America should be examining themselves with regard to customs, unspoken rules, opportunities, policies that may be resulting in a lack of equality for all members of the community. The meeting organized by Councilwoman Duke seemed to have been just that, an opportunity for discussion among a cross-section of Glendale residents who may not normally have such a chance to talk and learn from one another in this way. In short, this meeting and the news segment about it shows that Glendale has a pulse. We are awake. We are aware of what's happening in the world around us, and we're doing some housekeeping. As I watched the last council meeting, I was struck by the spirit of fear permeating the critical comments towards Mayor Lofty and Councilwoman Duke. Fear that Glendale's reputation had been tainted, that someone has called us all racists. Fear that a peaceful unity march organized by a local church in collaboration with our own beloved police would have resulted in rioting and destruction of property, and that our property values would fall. These sentiments simply don't connect with me and do not represent how many of my friends and neighbors feel and think about recent events. As I watched the angry criticisms and punitive demands unfold during that Zoom meeting, I felt embarrassed. The true threat to our property values is the possibility of potential home buyers viewing that recorded meeting. If a young family was looking in with curiosity about whether Glendale is a hospitable community in which to raise children, I think they would be shocked by the lack of kindness, tolerance, inclusion, or open-mindedness. Instead of seeing eagerness to listen and learn and make improvements where needed, they would instead witness silencing and bullying. The message was clear. We don't want to hear what was said in that meeting. Take it back. Say you're sorry. You called us racists and we are the victims here. Apologize to us. We are the 85% white majority and we've never experienced racism, so it doesn't exist here. Instead of listening, we dismissed the message and attacked the messenger. It wasn't our finest moment, Glendale. I want to raise my family in a world where people aren't afraid of conversations in an effort to make our communities stronger, where people understand that talking and listening to people whose perspectives are different from ours is a vital part of being citizens of the world. And it isn't scary. Does Glendale need sweeping overhaul in the area of race relations? Maybe not. Maybe a few simple strategic changes would better communicate love, respect, and value to our Black and Brown neighbors. But how will we know if we sabotage conversation and dismiss shared ideas? In the last council meeting, there was a clear message from some of our speakers that they are tired of hearing about racism and want us to stop talking about it. Well, history tells us that the best way to get people to stop talking about racism is to let them talk about racism. When people from different backgrounds come together in constructive conversation, anger and misunderstanding begins to heal and stronger communities result. Mayor and council members, you may be subject to more criticism and demands. Please know you have love and support from countless members of our community who see the demands for what they are, and we hope you can look right past them with thick skin and soft hearts and lead our community into an even better future. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Sarah Wiley. Sarah, are you there?
I am. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
All right. My name's Sarah Wiley, and thank you for allowing me to speak tonight. I'm speaking on my behalf. And I'm actually a newbie in the village. I've only been here 13 years, which makes me relatively new. I want to talk a little bit and tell you a little story about my neighbors. I have the kind of neighbors that everyone wants to have. They're kind, they're generous, they have strong values, and family is first. When they went to purchase their home, they encountered racism. This was not obvious name calling, but a loan process that took an extraordinary amount of time and countless obstacles that took many hours and out-of-pocket costs. Racism was more obvious when compared to another neighbor 2 doors down. That person, she had used the same bank, the same loan officer, and her loan was approved just 1 year earlier. The loan for this neighbor, who happened to be white, took less than 1 month for approval. The loan for the family took over 4 months. It did not end until the white family or the white neighbor asked the bank's corporate office to investigate. I see lessons from the story. First, racism is often dealt with privately and not known by everybody in the community. In other words, just because you don't know it doesn't mean that racism isn't happening. Second, racism is not always apparent. It took us several months to recognize what was happening to this family. And third, racism is still exercised in our community. While it was an outside institution, it shows how the outside world affects our community. It worries me that others are not open to conversations about this and other racial issues in our village. Personally, I was proud of how Glendale was portrayed in the WLWT interview. It showed leaders that care enough to open conversations and seek out situations such as the one that has happened to my neighbors. Showed that we have a neighborhood that is progressive in our approaches and willing to question the status quo. But when I heard the backlash and the defensiveness, that is when I was ashamed at how Glendale was being portrayed. I understand that some felt they were personally being called racist. This is not what I heard. I think Ryan Gary said it best in the last council meeting, a call to action being confused as an accusation. We can question property values, censoring emails, and question actions against our leaders, but they are mere distractions to the real issue. The real issue is racism, and denying it does not stop it from coming to Glendale. It affected our community long before the WLWT interview or Marilyn Duke put together a group to meet. Shouldn't we acknowledge that racism could be a part of our community? Shouldn't our leaders of our community serve us by discussing it with us? Don't you want to know the truth? And if it is exhibited here, don't you want to stop it? It is uncomfortable to talk about, and it is disturbing to think that horrible things may have happened and are happening. Denying it will not make it go away. This is larger than our own lives and our community. Like it or not, we need to act. I believe it is time to listen to all residents. Some will use public forums such as this, but others will not feel these are safe venues for them. That is why smaller conversations will be integral in this process. Let's make it safe for everyone to voice their thoughts and feelings. Let that voice be kind in its utterance, and let us meet that voice with kindness. I believe our leaders should be proactive in listening and help facilitate these conversations. This is when the healing starts. Let's take our village's kindness and generosity to the next level by listening and becoming part of the healing process. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Bill Parrish. Mr. Parrish, are you there? Bill, are you there? David, is he muted or can you tell?
I do not see his name on the participants list. There is an unidentified iPhone, but I don't have a name attached to that.
Okay. One more time, Bill Parrish, are you there? Can you get through to us? There are some, on the email notice that David sent you, there are some telephone numbers that you can call in order to join this meeting by audio. And we will certainly allow you to do so. But in the meantime, I'm going to move on But know this, that whenever you can get through to our meeting, we will welcome you in after the speaker then speaking is through. So our next speaker is Katie Gary. Katie, are you there?
Hi, yes.
Okay, please proceed.
Good evening. Thank you again for the opportunity to speak with you all tonight. First, I'd like clarity on the language for Ordinance 2020-30 for the police protective gear being recommended and approved funding using monies that had been appropriated for in-car camera systems. If in-car camera systems are being canceled, will officers be required to be wearing body cams? How the ordinance reads now is we don't want cameras, but we do want protective gear. If that's the case, it's just a concerning decision to me that affects both the safety of the officers and anyone who might be stopped. Video footage is literally the only thing that has helped bring injustices of police brutality to light in our nation. And I'm not accusing our officers of any such behavior. I expect them to honor their pledge to protect and serve. But without the requirement and enforcement of body cams, canceling of video equipment in the cars is not the recommendation that I would expect to see in today's world with today's issues and for the future of tomorrow. On to the future. In our house, we've made it an intentional effort to diversify our bookshelf. One new title for us is All Are Welcome Here. In it, one of my favorite lines is, we're part of a community. Our strength is our diversity. A shelter from adversity. All are welcome here. What I felt after participating in last month's meeting was not that this would be a community in which my family would be welcomed. Property values seemed more important than people. What I will say on the property values is that in order to continue to welcome new and diverse in every aspect residents, we as a community must be open to change. If that doesn't happen, Glendale will be put on the path to empty homes and lots and property value decreases, sure. It won't be because we were part of a national conversation of improving race within our country. It will be because people will listen to last month's meeting and say, this is not a place where my family can be welcomed or thrive. This goes especially for people of color or mixed race families like my own, who are looking for an inclusive neighborhood. Having a conversation about race is not going to hurt our property values, but being closed-minded and acting in ignorance and bigotry will. The conversation we need, should, and must have about race is a human rights issue. It's an issue that shows we care about all of our community members, not just 85% of them. There's been no accusation that Glendale as a whole is racist, but there has been a call to action, like Sarah said, to be better. It's a call to action to continue to be the Glendale we're known to be. It's a call to action to shake up the status quo and demand more, demand different, demand equity and inclusion. Why would we as Glendalians settle for just good enough? Why would we sit in the comfort of doing things the way we've always done them? How things were are not how things are. Today, being not racist is not enough. Being not a racist is a label you can put on and sit with and do nothing about. Our community goals should be to be anti-racist, actively, consistently working toward better, more inclusive ways. Our village has a reputation of being giving and kind. Let's continue to live up to it. Let's ensure that all people are not just invited, but they actually feel welcomed here. Ensuring a welcoming committee will take work. And it's not a static position, but one of progress for future generations. The work we do today isn't for us. It's for our children and grandchildren.
You have about a minute.
Might not be having these same exact conversations that have been happening 10, 20, 40, 60 years ago. It was said last meeting that one man's perspective was that what was happening here was nothing to the extreme of what he's seen anywhere else. That would, with racism, that would suppose that there is an acceptable level of racism. Do we as a village, do you as a council believe that there is an acceptable level of racism? And if so, I'm curious what it might be. Does your decision-making table have representation from all demographics of the village? How have you council members made diversity and inclusion part of the expected responsibilities? Are you actively and regularly engaged in conversations and programs related to diversity and inclusion? How are you fostering cultural competency in Glendale?
Your time is
What
expired.
conversation are you having to better understand the barriers in place that inhibit all community members?
Sorry, Katie, but this
to
got to
welcome
end.
here? Thank you.
Okay. Next speaker is Pam Cheney. Ms. Cheney, are you there? Pam,
I'm there. Do you hear me?
we hear you.
Okay, great. Thank you. Hello, everyone. I'm Pam Cheney. I've lived in the village for 25 years. I decided to speak tonight because I wanted to share my thoughts on the August 3rd council meeting. I was disheartened when I watched the meeting. People spoke of outrage, of the use of village resources, the use of an official title, the false accusations of racism, and a TV interview. All of this outrage was directed towards Mayor Lofty and Councilwoman Marilyn Duke. Marilyn, a Black woman highly regarded in the village, a member of the village council, and a member of many organizations in the community. What better person to open up a dialogue on race relations within Glendale? I'm guessing she felt a responsibility or obligation to facilitate such a meeting. I'd like to thank her publicly for her courage and her leadership. I know that Marilyn doesn't need me to speak for her, but I would like to speak in support of her. Marilyn Duke was not grandstanding or opportunistic by opening this dialogue on racism in Glendale. She had nothing to gain personally. In fact, the only thing she gained was a public rebuke for trying to do the right thing, for trying to lead a difficult discussion among neighbors, Black and white neighbors. This discussion is happening in cities across our country. I don't view this as a radical left-wing issue. I see it as a moral issue, but some may see it differently. On August 3rd, people also talked about property values and businesses being harmed from a TV interview. Sorry, there's my dog. I had a different opinion. I think prospective home buyers would see us as a community that is progressive, one that is unafraid to tackle difficult issues, a community that cares about all of its members. There was also much discussion on August 3rd about the appropriate use of village emails and titles. I viewed Marilyn's efforts to examine racism in Glendale as a public service. So I thought it was appropriate as a public official for her to use her title of councilwoman and to use the village email. I've since learned that this meeting was considered private and was not supported or endorsed by council or the village. My question is, why would it not be endorsed or supported by council or the village? Many people were offended by Marilyn's summary of the meeting at Christ Church about racism in Glendale. They were upset that her email didn't reflect their views. I was not offended by this email. I appreciated her summary. We need to listen to our Black neighbors with an open mind and hear their perspectives and their truth. Thank you to Marilyn and the people who had the courage to come forward to share their stories. So now it seems that this discussion is moving to a different forum, which may be wise. Mayor Lofty was right when he stated that there is opportunity and need for continuing conversation. Going forward, I hope that we could exhibit the same community spirit that has always defined us, that has always set us apart from other communities. Glendale is a village that cares about its neighbors. People are generous with their time, their talents, and their financial support. Now we need to be generous listeners. I have faith that we are up to the task of making Glendale a place where everyone feels included, respected, and valued. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Jenny Kilgore. Jenny, are you there? Jenny Kilgore? David, do we have any, is Jenny logged on?
Oh,
I was having
her in here. There we are.
trouble unmuting. Thank you. And I thank you for your patience and I apologize. Good evening, and thank you for allowing me a brief moment to reiterate my comments of August the 3rd at the August Council meeting. In the course of being a resident of the village of Glendale these last 36 years, raising my son and daughter in the village, my husband having his architecture office where the Bluebird Bakery is now, serving as councilwoman for 15 years and several of those as vice mayor, I've had the pleasure of interacting with and am very proud to consider many residents as friends in garden clubs, literary clubs, planning for village events, and casually connecting while walking. We are all bringing personal experiences and expectations. We are all aware of our political, economic, religious, age differences, while at the same time knowing that each of us are genuine in our interests to be good, caring neighbors and as resources for each other when others may need us. We live in a great community. We are that great community. Let's not let these or any other issues divide us in our community. Let's be informed and be a strong community. I again encourage a concerted critical examination of the Ohio Revised Code under which we operate, as it applies to the privilege and responsibilities of elected village officials and their use of village resources, and how well these are reflected in our village's rules of council. If I may participate in any way, I'm happy to do so. And again, thank you for giving me a moment to share my thoughts.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Richard Schwab. Mr. Schwab, are you there? Richard Schwab?
Yes.
Hello, thank you. Mr. Schwab, go ahead and proceed when you're ready.
Thank you. Well, I'm a 35-year resident of Glendale, and I have always enjoyed living in this special place. I want to say at the outset that in support of Marilyn Duke and Don Lofty, I suggest that we pull our Glendale community together and help move it forward through open, honest, self-reflective communication. We need to stop talking past each other. We need to start listening to each other. We need to dial down the suspicion, the fear, the defensiveness, and we need to dial up the respect, responsibility, and integrity. We need to eliminate politics from our future community relation dialogue. There's a lot of love in Glendale. I have met a fair share of better angels among us who live in Glendale. Let's learn from each other. Let's learn from within our community. Let's not be afraid to shine a big spotlight on Glendale's past and present and future. I urge Mayor Lofty to draw upon his successful Quiet Zone Task Force as an example and create a community connection task force. This task force should be large, it should be diverse, and it should be representative. This task force should have a mission, clear and simple, to help Glendale maintain inclusive, compassionate, and productive community relations. Glendale
You have about a minute, sir.
Glendale will benefit immensely from a community connection crew. CREW being the Latin acronym for Community Renewal and Enrichment Through Work. Let's get a Glendale crew working on our behalf. What could be more Glendale? Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Jennifer Schmall. Jen, are you there?
I'm here, Don. Thanks. Thank you, Counsel, for allowing me to be on the public record about this issue. This country has been dealing with racism for centuries, and I found it surprising that we as a community are afraid to talk about this, even to the point of publicly condemning a village member who was willing to have a transparent conversation about these issues. More concerning to me has been the invalidation of experiences and concerns that our fellow community members have expressed. I have known this village to be kind, generous, and supportive when fellow members are in need or crisis. And while I have heard individual persons express discomfort and fear with the Black Lives Matter movement, I was disheartened that that discomfort translated into being an unwillingness to express care and concern to the well-being of our people of color in our village. I was shocked at the anger and the intense emotion that was directed at Councilwoman Duke for her attempt at opening this dialogue about racism under the guise of inappropriate use of village email. If we as a village are so confident that racism is not an issue, then why do we seem to be so frightened of having a conversation? We need to be able to listen to each other with an open heart and an open mind. And let me say that this meeting has given me a lot more hope than the last. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Laurel Baca. Laurel, are you there?
I'm here. Hi, everyone. My name is Laurel Baca, and I live on Morse with my husband, Alex, and my kids, Eloise, who is 3, and Finn, who is 1. Thank you very much for having me tonight. We are so grateful every day that we live in Glendale, and because of this, I wanted to make sure to speak tonight in support of Mayor Lofty and Councilwoman Duke. When I received the communication that discussions had begun in light of the most recent racial turmoil in our country and watched the WLWT interview, I was relieved and proud to be in a place that was not afraid to have the difficult conversations that will ultimately make us better. I did not view this as calling Glendale racist or bad, but instead as continuing to promote and develop what has always made Glendale so magical. The community events, the wonderful opportunities for our children, and the support of those less fortunate than us have always been unmatched. I'm so thankful to live here and to give my children these opportunities. I was so thankful then to see that Glendale is continuing to live up to these high standards by addressing these issues, just as every community in the country should. Like everyone here, I want to give my children every opportunity, and that includes raising them in a place where there is equal space for all people and all voices. This is our chance to come together and grow, to make room so that the world is better for our kids. We know better now, so let's work together to be better every day. Thank you. That's it.
Thank you. And our final speaker is Alex Baca. Alex, are you there?
I think he has
Well,
kids
you know, is
climbing.
Alex going to speak? You were both signed up.
He has kids climbing on top of him right now, so he'll have to join next time.
I'm sorry, so he will not be speaking? Okay.
Thank you.
All right, so that concludes our speakers unless Mr. Parrish has been able to reach us. Yeah, I'm Bill Parrish, are you there and available to speak?
I still do not see him in the participants list, Mayor.
Yes, he was not able to make it this evening. So we're going to turn now to the business of council. We'll start with ordinance 2020-29, an ordinance directing the Glendale Community Improvement Corporation to sell certain vacant property lots, transferring said properties to the Glendale Community Improvement Corporation, reimbursing the village of Glendale for past expenses, and declaring an emergency. I should note that I'm not looking to waive 3 reads on this ordinance, so this would be the first read. However, I would point out there is an emergency paragraph in section 4, and that will enable the ordinance to go into effect immediately as soon as it passed, instead of waiting 30 days for an effective date. We have 2 properties that are being transferred here. One is 1169 Cole Avenue, for which the village has paid $9,173. And then 94 Washington Avenue. These are both lots, vacant lots, by the way, in which the village has invested $24,434. So the gist of it behind this ordinance is that if and when these properties are sold, the money that the village has invested will be returned to it. And then the rest of the money will be kept by the Community Improvement Corporation to continue doing things for the benefit of the village, provided, of course, that it also informs council of what it is doing. Do I have a motion for this ordinance?
So moved. Second.
And do I have okay, so there's no motion, no need for a motion to dispense with 3 reads. Is there some discussion?
Let me ask you something, Mr. Mayor. This goes into effect immediately without an emergency.
That's correct, but we're not waiving the 3 reads. So this is the first read. The next second read will be on October 5th at our meeting. We may or may not at that point decide that we want to waive 3 reads and make it effective then.
Well, I believe we ought to make this an emergency and do it. We've been talking about this for 4 months. I'd like to make a motion that this be declared an emergency ordinance.
Just to be clear, it is being declared an emergency, but we are not yet waiving 3 reads. So you could make a motion to waive 3 reads.
I'd like to make a motion to waive the 3 reads.
I'll second the motion, Mr. Mayor. I think the sooner we do something with these properties, the sooner it'll have a positive effect on the neighborhood and allow us to move forward.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I too have a question around the ordinance. To what extent how has the residents in the surrounding area of each of these properties been engaged in the process to comment on the sale or the raising and the development of the property of the vacant lots?
Mr. Cordes, maybe I can bring you in on this. I'm not aware of any direct communication with the residents.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Marilyn, it's a very good question. I will add a little more detail than Mayor Lofty initially offered, that during previous administrator's tenure, this was blighted property. Both properties on Cole and on Washington were condemned houses that the owners walked away from, fell in the rears on taxes. There were public hearings held, community development block grant funds, as well as village funds were used to acquire the properties, pay the back taxes, and raise the properties with the intent that they would be repurposed for housing at the appropriate time. Since we didn't have a CIC, that fell into a stall format, but now that we have a CIC, the reappropriation of the property to the private sector so it can be developed would seem appropriate. So initially, the residents were involved, Ms. Duke, when the properties were acquired by the Village of Glendale 2 to 3 years ago.
And so on 1169 Cole, according to Hamilton County Auditor's website, it's slightly less than 1/4 of an acre. Is the village or the CIC looking to have a house placed on less than 1/4 of an acre?
Well, it had a house on it that fell in disrepair. So the intent is to sell it to the private sector so another house can be built of the appropriate setbacks on the buildable lot.
Thank you for answering the question. And what about 94 Washington Avenue?
It is 9.8 acres, as I recall, almost 1 acre. It too had a 2-story farmhouse at the front of it that fell into condemnation. That has many possibilities that the CIC can explore, whether it's sold for a single family or possibly it can support more than one house since it is in the 1/3 acre zoning district.
That does have more acreage than the Cole Avenue. I reserve my concerns on the Cole Avenue in that it's such a small plot of land as to whether or not it could be developed with adequate setbacks and other things in a nice manner. No further comment, Mr. Mayor.
Any further discussion? Madam Clerk, would you call the roll? We'll start with the motion to waive 3 reads.
That's with the 3 reads. Mr. Bessel,
Aye.
Mr. Howeller,
Aye.
Ms. Duke. Ms. Duke,
No.
Ms. Masenko,
Aye.
Mr. Baysmith,
Aye.
Mr. Kreidler.
Aye.
For the ordinance, Mr. Bessel,
Aye.
Mr. Howeller,
Aye.
Ms. Duke,
Aye.
Ms. Masenko,
Aye.
Mr. Baysmith,
Aye.
Mr. Kreidler.
Aye.
Thank you.
Motion carried. The ordinance is passed. We turn to ordinance 2020-30, an ordinance authorizing the increase of 2020 estimated revenue and appropriations of the village capital fund, a capital projections fund, and declaring an emergency. And I should say that this ordinance is one that was referred to by one of the people speaking, one of our speakers, who asked about whether we were substituting, whether our police would continue to use body cams when we would not be having the in-car cams. In fact, first of all, I believe we still do have in-car cams. They were slated for replacement, and at some point they will not be usable any longer. But our police have always worn body cams, at least for many years. They were among the first in Hamilton County to do so, and they will continue to do so, which is the only reason why anyone was comfortable not investing in the new car cams. We did feel that the needs of our police, if they are called to assist other police forces in disturbances, that they needed additional gear to be adequately protected. These are not offensive things. They are just better body protection. Do I have a motion for this ordinance?
So moved.
Second.
And a motion to dispense with 3 reads?
So moved. Second.
Okay. As you can see, we had $20,982 that was encumbered for the for the cameras, and the protective gear is going to cost $19,433, So Mr. Bogran will be pleased to know that we're turning a bit of a profit here. Any discussion on this ordinance?
That's not a profit, Don. That's a savings.
That's a savings.
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Right. Yes, Ms. Duke.
Yes, thank you. One joint question, and that is in the first whereas paragraph, we speak of training and policy associated with the use of the gear. Can someone please describe the training and policy and let us know whether that policy is in place now, or are we looking to adopt new policy after the purchase of the equipment?
Can I address that, Mr. Mayor?
Please do.
All of the new equipment comes with training videos and procedures to use to put it on, how to put it on properly. None of this is offensive gear. This is all protective gear. And the training that goes with the gear is something our police, many of them have already had this training, but some have not. So that's the training part of it. And your other question was something about changing our policies. And I think that that's up to the chief and his lieutenants to come up with a policy change if there is a necessity for that. And then it would come to council as a policy change. I don't think any of us are very familiar with police work and how they have to do and the responsibility that they have to do their recording and what have you. And it's not that we're getting rid of we're not replacing body cams with police car cams. We're just using the money that was appropriated for new equipment to replace the older equipment. And Dave said he can live with the old equipment for a few more years. So that's why.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Further discussion? Okay. Do I have a let's see.
Yeah, we have motions on.
Okay. So Madam Clerk, would you call the roll?
Absolutely. To dispense with the 3 reads, Mr. Bessel,
Aye.
Mr. Howeller,
Aye.
Ms. Duke,
Aye.
Ms. Masenko,
Aye.
Mr. Bay Smith,
Aye.
Mr. Kreidler.
Aye.
For the ordinance, Mr. Bessel,
Aye.
Mr. Howeller,
Aye.
Ms. Duke,
Aye.
Masenko,
Aye.
Mr. Bay Smith,
Aye.
Mr. Kreidler.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, we turn to ordinance 2020-31, an ordinance authorizing the increase of the 2020 appropriations of the village plan and general improvement fund, authorizing payment for the replacement of HVAC work at 80 East Sharon Avenue, which of course is Town Hall, where we hope to be back sooner or later, and declaring an emergency. This ordinance is really about purchasing HVAC for the Town Hall. When we redid it, we had hoped that we wouldn't need to do this, but as summer came along, it became apparent that we did need to do it. The amount appropriation is for $18,297, which is the bid that we have received. However, if we pay in, I believe, cash, not cash, but immediately available funds, it will go down to, I think, $17,100. So I know that's not a savings, I know that's not a profit, but that is money that we will have. So do I have a motion for this ordinance?
So moved.
Second.
And to dispense with 3 reads?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Discussion.
Mayor, I have a question. If this was appropriated in 2019, do we really even need to vote on this?
Yes, we do. What happened was when we didn't use it, it went back into the VPGI fund. So now we reappropriate it back out. Is that correct, Wally?
That is correct, sir. Well explained.
Thank you.
Further discussion? Madam Clerk?
Dispense with the three reads. Mr. Bessel,
Aye.
Mr. Howeller,
Aye.
Ms. Duke,
Aye.
Ms. Masenko,
Aye.
Mr. Baysmith,
Aye.
Mr. Kreidler.
Aye.
For the ordinance, Mr. Bessel,
Aye.
Mr. Howeller, Mr. Howeller.
Aye.
Thank you. Ms. Duke,
Aye.
Ms. Masenko,
Aye.
Mr. Baysmith,
Aye.
Mr. Kreidler.
Aye.
Thank you.
We turn to ordinance 2020-32, an ordinance authorizing the clerk to certify unpaid water and sewer bills to the Hamilton County Auditor for filing as a lien on the tax duplicate of the owner's said parcel and be collected as other taxes and declaring an emergency. We do this from time to time when people, despite our best efforts, don't pay their water and sewer bills. So do I have a motion for this ordinance?
So moved.
Second.
And to dispense with three reads?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Cordes, maybe you could start this off by just telling us what efforts have been made to collect the bills before we go to this step.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll be happy to. As you know, our staff will contact people through normal letters, through phone calls, and finally, if no response, by certified mail. This particular property was purchased by a couple, was not occupied. It was being rehabbed as a flip, had the water turned on while they're doing the rehabs. And now it's back on the market for sale. They do not occupy the property as investment. But in spite of our best efforts, they will not respond since January to the bills owed to the Village of Glendale. And we fear that it's going to close soon. So we wish to get in front of it and put it on the tax bills so that we can be reimbursed what is owed us.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? Madam Clerk?
Dispense with the three reads. Mr. Bessel,
Aye.
Mr. Howeller,
Aye.
Ms. Duke,
Aye.
Ms. Masenko,
Aye.
Mr. Baysmith,
Aye.
Mr. Kreidler.
Aye.
For the ordinance, Mr. Bessel,
Aye.
Mr. Howeller,
Aye.
Ms. Duke,
You're muted.
Aye.
Masenko,
Aye.
Mr. Baysmith,
Aye.
Mr. Kreidler.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. We turn to resolution 2020-22, a resolution authorizing the administrator to prepare and submit an application to participate in the Ohio Public Works Commission State Capital Improvement and or local transportation improvement programs to execute contracts as required and declaring an emergency. This is a very high priority for us since it is intended to get funding to address the stormwater problems that we have found up on Hedgerow and Albion Streets. And we have gotten to the point where this is now the only request, I believe, for funding in this funding cycle. Do I have a motion for this resolution?
So moved.
Second.
And a motion to dispense with three reads?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? Okay, I should point out this is this is to file an application, and council will still be able to take this matter up again should we get the grant and then have to commit funds towards matching it. If there's-
Mr. Mayor, please check section 2. This actually is an ordinance awarding if we get the grant by the administration.
Okay, I'm sorry I misspoke.
Right.
It's still top priority.
Would you like a few details on this?
Please.
Be happy to. So as you know, the street committee empowered the village administrator to begin working on engineering to remediate the stormwater situation on Hedgerow and on Albion Road, which residents have brought to the council and the administrator's attention over the last few years with excessive flooding. In working with Kleinger's Engineering, we have determined that there are certain improvements needed, which total $625,000. That's for repaving both streets, putting in storm waters under driveways, and a significant storm collection system, which includes Bethany and all the homes on Hedgerow and Albion until you get to South Troy. We've applied for a 70-30 match. That is what this resolution empowers us to do, is to apply for 70-30 match. So the grant I'm requesting from Hamilton County is for $438,000, and then we would be responsible for the 30% amount to match it. We should know this fall if we get it or not for construction in 2021, and it's in line with the direction given by prior committee and council. Are there any questions?
Hey, Wally, I've got a question. What is this going to entail? I mean, what are they going to do for close to $1 million? You're on mute.
600,000.
I could go through the list. There are about 40 items. It's very, very detailed. But as you know, there is some stormwater collection on Albion Avenue. There is none on Hedgerow. So we would dig up the side of the road to the south, and we would put in large culvert pipes continuously under each driveway apron until it gets to the South Troy intersection, or Alt Lane, if you will. We would then run it up Hedgerow, doing that as well, putting curbs on both sides of Hedgerow to collect that water, which would also collect the Bethany project and all the homes on Hedgerow. So the lion's share of this, Mr. Howeller, is to put in large cement culverts underground, replacing those that are collapsed or have been removed or never were installed, and restore driveway aprons, of course, and then repave, grind and repave both streets with blacktop.
Okay, but let me get back to one of the reasons we rejected Bethany's ask for a different deal was because there never was a big problem on Hedgerow until they started their construction. So now are we going to pay to fix their bad engineering?
I don't think so. According to our engineer, we're collecting all of the homes on Albion as well as on Hedgerow and Bethany. If it were just for Bethany, I personally would have a problem with it as well. But water comes down out of the woods. There's in no proximity of Bethany now and floods houses. And they've been out during the rains and journalized that to document it for the grant application. I think what we're doing is for the benefit of everyone, including Bethany, but primarily for the residents.
Okay.
Any further discussion?
Wally, can you explain again where it all goes? So once that water is now going downhill past Alt Lane, where is it directed from there? Because I know that when we had that huge storm 3 months ago, it just congregated by the tracks. So where does this take it?
Alt Lane seems to be the terminus, Will, to from water coming through the woods as well as water cascading down the yards from Hedgerow down Albion. But goes under the street at Albion into the creek, which makes its way to the north and into Warwick, and then down into the creek system behind the sewer plant. This won't increase the water. It'll simply coordinate its collection so that it doesn't run through yards and end up there. It'll be managed underground instead of above ground.
Thanks.
Further discussion? Madam Clerk, I've forgotten. Do we have a motion on the table?
Here. For both the 3 reads and the resolution.
Okay, then call the roll, please.
I will. To dispense with the three reads, Mr. Bessel,
Aye.
Mr. Howeller,
Aye.
Ms. Duke,
No.
go.
Oh, there you go. Aye. Couldn't hear you.
It's okay. Mr. Baysmith,
Aye.
Mr. Kreidler.
Aye.
For the resolution, Mr. Bessel,
Aye.
Mr. Howeller,
Aye.
Ms. Duke,
No.
Ms. Masenko,
Aye.
Mr. Baysmith,
Aye.
Mr. Kreidler.
Aye.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Ms. Duke.
I have a concern about the language in section 2, which authorizes the village administrator to enter into, quote, any agreements as may be necessary and appropriate for obtaining this financial assistance, close quote. And the council not being able to further consider the scope of this work and the impact of collecting that water and running it and channeling it into a creek that frequently already overfloods. So my concern is really with the lack of scrutiny by council going forward on this project.
Okay, the ordinance, the resolution has passed, but you as a council person are certainly in a position to follow the developments on this project as it goes forward.
Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to turn now to the reports section of our meeting. And we're going to start with a discussion that arises out of the meeting of August 3rd, where questions were raised about various topics, and I've listed them generally here. I've purposely not tried to propose language because I really like to know where council's head is on various topics that I've put there. I should point out that under where it starts rules of council, etc., the very last line, there's a period and that says mayor's briefing on succession planning for certain village employees. That's a totally separate topic, obviously, but it did get sort of mashed into that set of other matters. So I just wanted to call that to your attention. So we're going to start with rules of council, and my thought is this: that questions were raised, and people I respect have raised questions about various issues here. Members of council have raised questions about them. And so I want to hear where council is thinking. And the question is really, is how much additional work are we going to need to do here? I see two possibilities here, three really. Council could decide that no changes are necessary in rules or procedures, and we could move on. Council could decide that there are specific changes in rules and procedures that should be implemented, and that we should direct our solicitor to develop language that will correct those or implement those changes. Or the discussion could be broad-ranging, and where there is no consensus, in which case I would propose then that council reconvene as a committee of the whole at a later date, possibly when Mr. Bessel has his finance committee meeting, and discuss these issues further. So all I'm looking for right now is on each topic, just top of mind thinking from the council as to what direction they would like these things to go. And so the first question is usage of titles by village officials and employees. And I'm going to just start with the junior member of our council, although he's certainly got a lot of experience in council, and that would be Mr. Kreidler. Will, do you just want to start off and then we'll work our way around the room?
Mayor, I've looked at the rules kind of on what a council person's real duties and responsibilities are. And, you know, it gives about, I think it's about 15, 20 pages of everything from the mayor's duties to the treasurer's to the, you know, how you call an executive meeting. It doesn't really spell out, besides like the 8 or 9 things we need to do to lead our committee, doesn't really spell out true details of, besides leading our committee and reporting to council, where we fall in. So I'd really be curious to hear what everyone else has to say. And then if I'll leave it at that, and then I'll circle back.
Okay, Mr. Baysmith?
In looking at the volume of text that covers the issue, I suggest that it be any conversation be delayed till a committee of the whole, rather than trying to make a decision during a council meeting.
Okay, I'm just trying to get some ideas though, as to and this is almost like a brainstorming thing right now. So if there are any specific changes people are thinking about, I'd be interested in knowing. So,
Mr. Mayor,
Ms. Masenko.
since I'm next on the pecking order, I guess, if you're doing that. While I agree with Mr. Baysmith that now might not be the best time to be all that creative, it's that we've been at this for a while. I do think it is extremely useful for us to look at the rules of council as it relates to the use of titles, for the very reason that it tends to, if not done properly, tends to send a message of council's involvement when council may not be involved. I think it's fair for us to talk about clarifying how titles are used. Not just in emails and newsletters, but also related to commercial media, as it relates to print, electronics, or broadcast media. So I think it's a broader topic that certainly can't be addressed tonight.
Okay, Ms. Duke.
Well, I'm looking at the rules of council right now, and Rule 8 speaks to standing and special committees. It does not speak to any particular responsibilities or expectations of a council member. Rule 9 speaks to committee responsibilities, and neither does it relate to expectations or standards for individual council members. We do not have in our council rules any particular rules regarding use of title and the like. And I do not feel that we need to adopt any. We are each elected officials, and as such, we are bound by responsibilities in being an elected official. I do not consider whatever has occurred to warrant the adoption of particular language. And if we were to adopt particular language, I would wholly recommend that it be thoroughly discussed in a committee of the whole, and with more information than what we currently have. In terms of looking at the rules of council, let me just remind council members that each year, council looks at the rules of council and adopts them or revises them at the January meeting. This is called for in our current rules of council. We in the past have deliberated upon section by section, line by line, to see if we can improve upon the rules of council And we did make some wholesale changes in the year 2017, as I recall. There are other provisions in the rules of council, aside from those which we do not have on use of title, that warrants our attention as well, and which we have recently had some problems with, namely public notice and publicizing council meetings and committee meetings in advance as required under our rules of council and to meet the Open Meetings Act requirements. We say, for instance, that we use the bulletin boards as our official notice. However, in one of the rules, we also say that our official notice is through the bulletin boards and also our website. And yet our website has not been up to date and publicizing the notices as it should. I don't want to be specific, but I do want to reemphasize that there are other rules in here, in our current rules of council, which really warrant our attention. And I would ask us to look at these deliberatively.
Okay, Mr. Howeller.
Well, I think we have to have a second meeting or look at this further. But Marilyn, I was the one who was most upset about what happened after your seminar. My property was damaged, a direct result of that. And I don't believe that when you had your meeting and you said that it inferred that the council and the village of Glendale had discussed this and that we were all on board, and we didn't discuss it. And how would you like it if I said, well, I'm a council member and I'm in the NRA and we support the Second Amendment and gun rights. And all of a sudden now it means that Marilyn Duke is a Second Amendment gun right person. And that's what happened. And that's why the village is so upset. We're not upset because of the black community versus the white community or any of this kind of stuff. We're upset at the insinuation that everybody in Glendale had your opinion. And that's why we have to do something. I agree with you, Marilyn, wholeheartedly. We need to sit down like adults, go over our rules of council and settle this thing so that we don't go into this trap again and that the community can go past a divide that was just unnecessarily planted. And that's how I feel about it. But I will work with you and we will get this accomplished. You know I will work with you. I have for ever time. So let's get this accomplished and let's do it in a manner that we're not rushing and not doing it on television. We need to have our time together to get it done. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Bessel.
Okay. I think it is a good idea to go over the rules of council. I think given the recent developments, it's a good idea to do it now. It's done annually, but it's a good idea to do it right now. And we have the rules of council in front of us, or I do, and we're all of us familiar with what it says in Article 8 and Article 9. And council acts, is my understanding, acts as a body. And the work of council is through committees. And those committees do their work and they report back to council. And then after that legislation is done, things come out of council and then it's dispensed into the community. And typically that communication comes from the mayor or the administrator, or people just learn about it by reading the ordinance that have been passed. Our rules of council don't anticipate that individual members of council will act on their own. And I don't think the state of Ohio laws anticipate that either. And that being said, I am not trying to place blame or find fault. This is an administrative matter that we need to be careful of. Alan just said that if a council person decides they're going to communicate something and identify themselves as a council person or indicate that there's been work done that could be interpreted as council work, we can have anything come out versus things that have already been approved and through council. So that's my interpretation. I think that is the correct interpretation of how council works. The mayor is an individual person. Our administrator is an individual person. Council should act as a body. Regarding communications from the village email, that should be, if it does come from council, and I don't know that it ever has until recently, it should be council's work or council business. Racism is a major issue in this country, and it's an important issue, but it was not before council at that time. And I want to uncouple those two things because I don't want someone to interpret immediately that I think that racism isn't an issue. I want to stay focused on this as an administrative issue. So put the racism issue aside, and the administrative issue is that when you communicate through the village email, it should be for village business. And if it has something to do with a community meeting, get together, what have you, it should be the type of thing that is open to all. A bake sale at the library, a pancake breakfast at Presbyterian Church, the village pancake breakfast. Those things have always been in village email. And then the normal things that Wally as the administrator and Don as the mayor communicate out that reflect the work and the business of council and the business of the village. And then in the use of council titles, anyone in Glendale can have a meeting about anything that they want. It can be something as noble as a meeting about how do we become better connected with people of different races, religions, etc. Unfortunately, it could be something as base as someone that's deciding they'd like to have a Ku Klux Klan rally or plant a cross on Fountain Square and burn it in downtown Cincinnati, which one Christmas did happen. They had to tolerate a cross for a little bit. So anybody can have meetings or discussions about anything that they want. Garden club, more trees, figure out how to fix the roads more, whatever it is. But when we use our title as council person, it can give the connotation that this is council's work. And we have to be careful that when we communicate that way, as a council person, we're involved in council work and not our own individual opinions or interests. I'd like to ask Kathy Ryan, Kathy, with regard to the council itself and the council acting as a body, can you shed some light on this and how we can, and we maybe a meeting, a committee of the whole, but shed some light on this as how we might best approach this, Kathy. I hope I'm not putting you on the spot.
No, it's fine. I agree that the usage of email should be clarified in the manner in which any sort of village email newsletter is utilized should be and remain focused on council activity that has some formal presentation of it amongst the committee or the council itself. You're right, the mayor, the administrator, they work in somewhat individual capacity to do things in the village, and therefore the scope of what is considered their efforts as on behalf of the village can be a little bit more broad. So when you do have the council members acting as council members, it should be clarified that the village communications in that regard be kind of formalized and consistent. And that's something that we could add in the council rules that clarifies the extent to which the council or the village email rather is used. I'd hesitate to say how people use their titles is something that could be formally put into a policy. I don't know that that's something I've commonly seen. I think that comes more from just defining within the council rules what actually constitutes village business. Everyone as an individual, elected or otherwise, has their own freedom of speech to say what they want to say about source of their and the source of their issue that they're bringing forth, or the capacity in which they're doing it. But we can't control that, but we do need to make sure that the policy is clear on what constitutes official village business. And the email usage should reflect that.
Mr. Mayor.
What about council acting as a body versus individual council people? Kathy.
What's your question exactly?
The idea of how council acts and conducts its business as a body versus as individual council people, or as the body of council through committees working at the direction of the mayor or of council as a whole.
Yeah, to the extent you would have a policy that presents things that were.
We can't hear you very well, Kathy.
The extent that you have a policy that defines how things are utilized on the village email or village newsletter, that would be something where the council members' communications should be those which are done through the committee.
But do our current rules of council pretty much cover the correct functioning of council as a body of council?
It's not, it addresses committees. The extent to which it defines what the role is, so to speak, of council, it does not. That's not something you would normally find in the rules. The authority and scope, role, responsibility, ethics, everything that surrounds a council member as an elected official has to do with the statutes and the Constitution of the state of Ohio. It's not something that we would distill down into the rules. It's more, the policy manual is more to focus on making sure that if the village desires to use its newsletter and emails and certain formalized avenues to communicate with the village, that we make sure that those clearly define the way in which the council members use them.
Okay, I'd like to keep this discussion moving, and I would like to invite our clerk and treasurer to submit their views, since I think what we are talking about is guidelines for conduct and communications by public officials, and they are certainly public officials. So, Mr. Beaugrand, would you care to step in on this discussion?
Yeah, I think, as Kathy mentioned, I think it's very important to address how, as a public official, we should be using our title within our community. But I would go even a little further, how our ability to use our title as we address the media outside of our community. Do we have permission to do so, or do we have to go through council for authorization to do so as an elected official? As a resident, of course, I do not, but if I were to approach the media regarding our budget and how we could raise additional revenue for our community without going through council, I think it would put council and the mayor, probably, and the administrator in probably a delicate position if it did not support the position that council and the mayor have at the time. So I'd like to get clarification on that aspect of it also.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Terrell.
I think I agree with a lot of what's been said. I read the rules of council several times. They are confusing. It's obviously Ohio Revised Code verbiage and stuff. And I think that a lot of that can be cleaned up. I don't know how much leeway we have on how the verbiage is presented. And that might help, particularly as other people look to run for council, or if they have questions about, our ongoing procedures. I think anything that we review and help for our own personal clarity and the village clarity would be helpful. So.
Thank you. And since this, whatever we do here is going to apply to me as well as everybody else, I'm going to take my turn to express a few thoughts and just put them out there. The reason this issue can cause us a lot of difficulty is that it looks to strike a difficult and perhaps impossible to perfectly achieve balance. It is a very common thing for people in public office to speak their minds on issues of concern to the public. And as elected representatives, I feel to some extent we have a responsibility to solicit opinions from our residents, let them know what we are thinking, even if it's an issue that perhaps we don't have full agreement from council on. Maybe it's an issue that isn't even before council yet, and we're still, we're thinking about bringing it up at council, and we want to know what our constituents think. At the same time, we don't want residents to think that when we're speaking on behalf of council. We're speaking for anybody but ourselves. And that becomes how you communicate that, include that in your discussion is very tricky. I can tell you this, the years I spent in Washington, and I know Maryland has gone through this, seen this too. It was very common for a member of, let us say, a commission to, when he or she had a speaking engagement, their remarks would begin with a disclaimer that this person, Commissioner XYZ, is speaking only for the opinions stated by Speaker Poobah should only be considered those of the commissioner himself. They do not necessarily reflect the views or thoughts of the commission as a whole. And that would be something that would have to religiously be inserted into printed, certainly written remarks, printed. But if you were giving a talk on something, it would also have to be done there. I do sense that there is no consensus here, and we've kind of skirted around, we've talked about some of the issues here as terms of use of titles, but also in how we use the news, our news media in the village, and how we use news, how we react, how we interact with news media outside the village. We have virtually no policy on the latter. And, that means that, maybe there's room for some changes there. So what I would urge at this point is that we continue thinking about these issues, that we bring them up, let's say at the next, at an opportunity for council to discuss them as a whole in a meeting of the whole, and bearing in mind that everything we do is going to have to be announced in advance. People will be entitled to attend if they wish to. I have a sense that it probably will have to be another Zoom meeting if we're going to do it, because I think a lot of people are going to want to know what we're doing. Perhaps it could be something like a hybrid where you have the council and government people meeting in person, and then the whole meeting is broadcast to anyone who wishes to listen to it, either Zoom or YouTube or whatever. I'm just putting that out. We got to think about this a little more. But to me, I don't know that we need any much further discussion here. I sense that at least one commissioner would like to say something, and Ms. Duke did ask to speak. I'm open to hearing it then, Marilyn.
Yes, thank you, Don. I am very much concerned, obviously, and would want us to explore whether we are looking at having council as a whole approve beforehand of action being taken by a particular council person to address a public concern or an area of governmental concern. Does that require action by council as a whole? Does that call for disclosure and transparency in one of the committee meetings? Certainly that did occur at the June 23rd Laws Committee meeting, where it was discussed, where I mentioned it beforehand, what would transpire and what was being considered. And there was one or two comments, as I recall at that time. And I also mentioned it at the July council meeting in briefing the council on what had occurred. And then I did a follow-up briefing to the Laws Committee before the summary was issued and sent to the administrative office for release in the newsletter. So at what point, when we talk about changing our wording in the rules of council, at what point are we saying that council should approve of a council person's actions before they're done, before acting?
Well, it's getting late, but if there's if people want to say other things, we can do that, or we can simply put off further discussion for a meeting of council as a whole.
Hey, Mayor, it's Will. When you had me go first, I thought we were just talking about the rules of council. I didn't realize you wanted us to talk about the communications too. So I have at least 5 minutes to talk about that, but why don't we push that back to your idea about getting together separately?
Thank you. I think that's the way to go. I don't think we're going to settle anything here, and I think maybe some further thought will do us all some good.
I think just one more thing, Mayor, though, with respect to Marilyn's comments, I understand where you're coming from. My interpretation of what's written in the council rules is the council acts through committees, and then those committees report back to council, and that the work that's involved in the business of council is it's typically the activities that the council is engaged in. I think as a resident, you're able to have meetings on whatever kind of a subject that you want. I think where the confusion came about was the use of title and the use of village email. And I think if those things hadn't happened, I think then we are within the scope of the rules as I understand the rules of council. So, I'm not against what you did. I think there were just some procedural things where we just, it didn't follow what my interpretation of the rules of council are. And it was not, the work or the meetings that you had were not council business, and it wasn't council work. It was your own work.
Okay, I'd like to move on because it's a very important subject, and I think one that has been on the minds of a lot of us, but this is just more of a status update. I'm not looking for any action from council at this point, but I just want to keep you informed as to where things are going on the very important question of succession planning within the village staff. As some of you know, and probably most of you have guessed, the village is going to lose two of its most valued and long tenured employees in the near future. And I just want to, I'm going to say a lot of nice things about these people later on, but I want to just give you an update here. First of all, Phyllis, our financial and personnel assistant, was hired. She's been with us, I believe, 23 years or so, and has just done an excellent job. I take it back, that's 33, I think. So, wow. She's done an excellent job. She knows everything about Hamilton County and the state financial requirements. She will be hard to replace. Oh my gosh, I look at my notes here. I'm sorry, I was reading wrong. 41 years is by my count. Dedicated service. We are working with her on a specific date, but we're pointing towards the end of the year. And we have already begun a search for a replacement. We are truly hoping to find some talented financial person out there who wants to come to Glendale. We hope that will be a very attractive place for them. And we hope to have that person on board in time to at least participate in part of the budget process, so that they will get a feel for what we do. But at the same time, we will have Phyllis and David, who has been doing a lot of work in finance also, carrying the heavy load in getting us through this year's budget. And then, of course, there's Mr. Cordes, our village administrator. He has been with us for, I believe we counted 27 years today, if you count both tenures as the administrator. He also had a brief stint with us in the beginning, I understand, as a police officer before moving elsewhere, I believe to Sharonville, and then coming back as the administrator. He has, all I can say is he's run the office very well, very efficiently. Residents have great respect for him, and they respond very well when they're speaking with him. I can tell you, as when he came aboard for the second time as a relatively new mayor, he was a great help. He has been a great help to me. We knew this was coming. Wally had made it clear that he was, about 2 years ago even, he started talking to me about when he would be leaving. We began to think about who his successor might be. And we had somebody in mind. It was David Lumsden, who had been an intern with us for a considerable period of time. We liked him very much. He had gone to Green Hills, where he'd done very well, and we kept hearing his name in county meetings and places like that, and seeing him taking responsibility for projects that had countywide significance. And we knew that if we're going to get him, we had to do something. And so we did bring him on board, partly so that Phyllis could begin moving away from her full-time position into part-time, which she has done. And we have, he is now, I believe, poised to take over for Wally sometime in the first quarter of, probably the end of the first quarter of next year. So that is where we're at this point. I wanted to let you know about that. I'm not a big fan of pulling the Band-Aid off slowly, and nor am I a fan of early announcements of planned retirement. Too often somebody becomes what I used to refer to as dead man walking when they start announcing their retirement plans way early. But I don't think this is way early. I think it's the appropriate time to be talking to, letting you people know, and also the residents who are listening to this and seeing it, what is going on in their village office. And so I want to just bring you folks up to date on that. The remainder of this is my mayor's report, which I'm going to do my best to keep short. But we have no births reported. And as we've been doing, I'm holding back on the deaths until we can meet in person and honor and acknowledge those people who have left us. So I'm just going to run down the list quickly. The bridge on Sharon Avenue is at last reopened. We are going through a punch list with the contractor, and we are, there's some finishing work to be done, but the bridge is open. I think it looks pretty good. And I think the project came out well. I'm embarrassed by how long it took, and I'll just say that. In the meantime, the water main on Sharon Avenue has been laid down, and that will soon be connecting individual residents who on Sharon Road are served by that main. And then there'll be some other things that we will have to do in that regard. Lead lines are going to have to be where they are from our pipe to the shutoff box. We have to replace them. Where they are from the shutoff box to the resident's home, we have to inform the resident and greatly encourage them to replace them. There will also we also have what we know is going to be a very financially attractive deal with our contractor for them to do so. And the work will also include a larger main that runs from the Sharon Road main on South Troy up to Warwick, and it will improve the water service in that area and also the service of some hydrants, even the hydrant on Greenville, which was noted during hearings on the quiet zone. The parking lot east of the tracks is done. The parking lot east of the tracks is done in terms of paving and restriping. There is still landscaping to be done, and that needs to wait until we have better weather for planting. But the islands in there will be planted attractively with trees and shrubbery. And then finally, as most of you know, ODOT has begun its preparations for its Through the Valley project in Glendale. They have removed 3 of the 4 houses east of Chester Road, and then the house that is also on the southwest corner, the other side there, at Sharon and Chester. The work is still, we've got a long ways to go. We've got, there's probably a couple of years before the work is done up there, ODOT's work. We don't have any definite dates from them at this time, although you can go on their website and I think they're looking at about 2 years or 3 years. So that's it for the mayor's report. Madam Clerk, would you call for the committee reports?
Finance Committee, please.
Finance Committee is attempting to set a meeting date, and we've been attempting that a little bit through email. The date currently is Tuesday, the 8th of September is the date that most people can make it. Marilyn has informed me that may not work. That the meeting would be maybe at 6 o'clock. Would that date work for, could that work for everybody, 6 o'clock on Tuesday, the 8th?
Yes.
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 Alan? Yep. Marilyn? Yes.
I've already responded. I have 2 other civic meetings here in Glendale that day, and I don't know what time it will end. So I don't know. I can't say that I will be available at 6 o'clock.
Okay. The 9th would be very difficult for me. Would everyone else be available on the 9th?
I'm available.
Yes.
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 Yeah.
Marilyn, does that work for you?
Yes.
Okay. Let's go with the 9th. It's a pretty important meeting. I think everybody should be there, and we'll need to do it in person because of the voluminous notes and spreadsheets that we'll have in front of us. So again, I would like for everybody to be there. As far as a meeting of the whole, Don, I don't know how well that'll coordinate, but we can talk about that offline.
I agree.
Since we got everybody in the room.
6 o'clock, Mike.
6 o'clock for now. Does that 6 work for everyone? Do you want to start at 5 or is 6 good?
Start at 5. Start at 5.
Start at 5.
Everybody can do 5?
5.
the 9th at 5, that's great. Then I might make my other commitment. Otherwise, Katie's husband, Ryan, might have to help me run practice.
I knew that's what that was, so I would
Yeah.
check with you.
So one final thing, and I'll make this as light as I can. The reference to whether or not one of the gentlemen thought that any amount of racism is appropriate ever. I think that was referred to me, a comment that I made, and I do not feel that any amount of racism is ever acceptable. I have spent years, and I don't mean years from the standpoint of one day a week for a number of years. I mean, if you add up the time of productive hours, it would be years. Working with organizations, one of their main purposes is to minimize and eliminate racism and build community. So no, I don't feel that any amount of racism is appropriate. My comment was directly towards the concern that I had that the sky was falling in Glendale and both sides were very unhappy. And I was trying to, through referencing areas of the world and our community that I know that are negatively affected by racism and socioeconomic issues, that Glendale is nowhere near as bad off as some of these communities are, and trying to bring us back to the fact that Glendale is a very good community. And that's why that comment was made, to try to put things in perspective. It was very contentious, and I was hoping to put things in perspective through that comment. So now I'm done, Mayor. Thank you.
Madam Clerk.
Fire Committee, please.
Police Committee?
Fire's next. Will, are you taking on fire now?
I'm not. That's
We're not. Okay,
that's
so we've got.
However, I take it on effectively tomorrow. So I'm still buildings tonight.
Okay. So we'll skip since Chief Hardwick already talked.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. Laws and claims, please.
Laws and Claims Committee did not meet in the month of August. I will refer council members back to the Laws Committee meeting of July and that of June 22nd. So we did not meet again. Once again, we did not meet in August, but we did meet in July and we did meet in June. Will, in particular, if you would kindly review those proceedings on YouTube, it should bring you up to speed with what occurred and help you segregate fact from fiction. Thank you.
Marilyn, what was the date on that? Sorry.
June 22nd.
Okay.
And July 9th.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Police Committee, please.
We did not meet, David. We did meet, but
Yeah, we did.
We did meet, and we discussed some of the way to finance the protective gear. Everybody has seen the minutes, and Dave didn't think that we needed to meet this month, so there is no further report.
Thank you. Public Buildings and Historic Preservation.
Public Buildings as a whole did not meet during the month, but we have a working committee that's been addressing the improvements to the fire department, to Village Hall, made possible by a generous gift from some residents. And that working group has been meeting every Monday. Thank you, Mr. Bogran, for your work on that. And that's all I have. Oh, and I'm happy to tell, where's Will? Mr. Kreidler, it's all yours now.
Thank you, Nancy. I appreciate all your notes.
Thank you. Recreation and Playgrounds.
Recreations and Playgrounds actually did meet in August because we met this week. And we met to look specifically at some changes and upgrades in the play equipment at Cleveland Park. We have a number of bids and some design suggestions, which we are considering, and we will be looking at the vendors to see which one best fits our needs, and we'll be taking action on that in the near future.
Thank you. Streets, public improvements, and lights.
That committee did not meet, but we will be having meetings after the finance committee meetings as we start the budgeting process and develop the budget for the streets plan for next year.
Thank you. Utilities, please.
Yes, give me a moment, please, to apologize for the technical difficulties that I experienced at the beginning of the meeting. Actually, my microphone had worked properly watching the YouTube of the planning committee meeting, and I had not experienced any problem. But anyway, I've changed computers, so now I'm able to both speak and be heard and watch you all. The Utilities Committee did not meet in August. However, I want to mention that there were a lot of activity that was discussed in the July meeting and a number of actions that we plan on taking. There's actually been some progress. One of them is the beginning of the process to test various meters throughout the village to confirm whether there are failures or need for replacement or not. And that has begun, and there were some test results that indicated that so far the meters are performing properly, but that test will be expanded further. There are a number of other issues that probably I will delay until the next Utilities Committee meeting, but Mr. Cordes has some issues that I guess they're not issues, are they? Well, yeah, there's some needs that need to be addressed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mayor Lofty and I did a Zoom conference call meeting with the Ohio EPA Division of Surface Water, Mr. Glenn, I believe you pronounce it. In it, he described us as having consistently excessive overflows into the retention systems of the sewer plant. And he stated this time that he is now requiring the village of Glendale to put together what's called a CMOM development. CMOM stands for Capacity Management, Operation, and Maintenance Plan Development. We discussed this with our engineer, the utility supervisor, Kevin Bell. Our engineer has put together a response to Ohio EPA, which will satisfy them that we're making progress moving forward, and that we will develop a CMOM. We will request low interest funding to do the CMOM and to come up with a long range plan to identify where the water is getting into our sanitary sewers, how it's getting in there, to map it properly, and then to do a long range plan and financing to address those needs. This goes well into the future, into 2023, but the process of developing the CMOM must begin now. So Mayor Lofty and I have arranged for an engineer to begin working on it, to be compliant with the Ohio EPA. And as more information comes in, I'll be happy to make a presentation at the next utility committee meeting with full staff.
Thank you. I have no further observations or comments. Thank you.
Thank
you. Madam Clerk, do you have anything to report?
No report.
I think that was a no, but we can't
No,
hear you.
nope, no report.
Okay. And Mr. Treasurer, do you have anything to report?
Not this time. Once the data from our investment firms available, we'll issue a report to council, and I'm hoping to do that later this week. Since today is the end of the month, I'm hoping that I'll get something tomorrow, and then right after that, I'll send something to council. I'm also in preparation for the finance meeting. I'm going to do a look forward on our investment return, which is not looking good at all. So I want to be able to be in a position to share with Finance Committee what we're looking at for 2021 in terms of returns. With interest rates dropping to almost nothing, we're just hanging on to CDs that we've got ladder that are still going to put us in a fairly decent position, but I think we'll have to take a look at our expenditures coming out of VPGI going forward.
Thank you. Okay, turning to financial reports, we have received a number of financial reports. We have received the general checking report for the month of August. We have received the enterprise checking report for the month of August. We have received a revenue report that takes us through July 31st. We have received an expenditure report that oddly enough takes us through August 31st. And we have received a cash transactions report that takes us through August also. So with that, do I have a motion to acknowledge receipt of these reports?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Hearing no objection, I will assume everybody is in favor. And now the chair will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Hey, Don, Mike, did you get your question, that question answered? About the, Mike Bessel, about the items on there? There was a copier repair for over 5,000, which seemed huge.
No, I did not get that answered.
Okay.
Time to ask it.
On Mayor, on August 13th, there was a really large copier repair charge, which I'm not even sure a copier is worth that much, over 5,000 bucks.
Maybe Wally knows what that is.
David, possibly.
I do not. There was a new one purchased. Maybe it was it possibly for the purchase of one?
I would have to verify that. I know CSM has several small bills that they send us. I don't believe they total 5,000, but we can look into that and figure out what it is.
Okay, I'll email you the specifics tomorrow.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks, Will.
All right. Now the chair will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you all.